said, I'm Amber. This is the last in the series. I'm very excited about today's topic because I absolutely love IoT. It's interesting, it changes every day, and it's super exciting because this is kind of that next area that we're looking at in digital forensic investigations to find new pieces of evidence that really kind of do biomarkers back to what our potential suspect might be doing. So I'm very excited to do this. I've been doing digital forensics for the past 30 years. I've been in the technology sector for it, and I do investigations as well. I have some interesting examples in some of my areas that we're going to discuss about IoT, but hopefully you get a nice overview of this particular area of digital investigations. So what I'm going to go through is we're going to talk about our current challenges faced with the IoT side of things. Then we're going to talk about some of the workflow adjustments that you would have to do to be able to start doing an intake associated with IoT devices. And I'm going to then focus in one particular area. There's so many different areas of IoT, and we only have a short, tiny window. So we're going to look at more of the IoT human and home sides of it and look at what those potential artifacts look like that come from those particular types of devices. So let's start out by just talking about the overall IoT environment. And this is what I was talking about when I said there's a lot of different areas. So each one of these represents a different area of digital evidence that we can potentially add into an investigation, whether we're looking in the human element, which are devices that directly connect to an individual, all the way through to the vehicle side of things and looking at kind of that side of digital investigations, and then going to drones, cities, factories. All of these kind of have a different factor with it, but they all fall under the IoT heading, which of course is Internet of Things. Sorry, I should have said that in the beginning. When we start deciding to incorporate this into our different workflows for capture, you really have to kind of do a moment in each area. And I say that because you can have devices kind of jump between the two different areas or three or four, and they can all kind of compound into what your investigation might be doing. We'll focus on just a very specific area, but out of all of these, I've actually done investigations in everything except for the factory. For some reason, I don't get a lot of access to factories to take a look at some of those systems, but I've had some type of investigation that falls into each one of the other areas. So when we think of those areas, let's think about some of those challenges, because it's a very broad scope of what we have to look at when it comes to different devices. We have everything from problems of interoperability to connectivity on how they're actually talking to one another, to the security associated with them. Believe it or not, IoT has very poor security written for it. It doesn't have a lot of standards associated with what has to be implemented within its architecture, and so it does have a lot of security challenges. Sometimes we can actually exploit those security challenges as a methodology to be able to gain forensic access to it. And then that last little area is you might end up going back to the management of your organization and say, hey, we need to start looking at IoT devices, and have them go, what are you talking about? And that's that awareness area. That's kind of why I think these particular presentations are advantageous to you for attending as webinars, because it gives you kind of that cutting edge of what you should be looking at and what you need to go back and make adjustments to in your strategies. So this is one of your adjustments. So this is actually the architecture associated with 5G, and it looks a little different than you might expect because 5G has been the largest impact associated with IoT. Its generation of wireless and telephony associated with it were really invented for the IoT processes that are expanding and happening. Really, if you think about it, think about the emergence of self-driving cars. In order for those to really go into market, we had to have a better infrastructure for their signal to communicate, which is where 5G ended up happening. Now, 5G is designed differently than we've seen with 4G because it works more similarly to a mesh network, which means as I have more 5G devices available to me, the 5G signal itself actually becomes stronger. That's why we're seeing this as a good proliferation option for our communication with IoT devices. A good example of this is Japan did a very interesting study where they designed a new antenna that makes it so they can just mount it into a window, and all of a sudden they've added 5G capabilities to an area. So definitely you're not seeing changes happening in the physical towers, because again, we're looking more of a mesh network standard as opposed to a traditional cellular network as we've seen in the past. And you can turn anything into a 5G tower. That's really one of the big expansions that we're going to see with IoT, where we see it more and more in our investigations, is because that particular connection is becoming more and more available globally. So what are these big factors associated with it? Is obviously the 5G that I just talked about it. The next thing is our microprocessors. And the reason why that becomes a factor is we've actually improved our manufacturing capabilities quite a bit when it comes to manufacturing different chips and processes associated with those chips. And because of that, we're seeing more and more devices go out there. They're affordable, which means I can get anything from, for example, a smartwatch that can cost me $10 to $15 all the way up to thousands of dollars. So we've seen a nice expansion happen in that, and that's changes actually in the type of processors we're using across these devices. The other thing, and you might see this in the background of my camera, is we're seeing an expansion in our mixed reality. And some of that expansion is within our virtual reality sector that actually falls within our IoT environment. It's kind of a different topic, but it is one that our gaming and our virtual reality side of things is really increasing the proliferation of our IoT environments. And then the last one, of course, you cannot end a presentation anymore without talking a little bit about AI, which means that our AI development work that we're seeing is only making improvements in this particular sector. So let's talk about forensics. So here are the workflows. So when we actually start thinking about our architecture associated with IoT, they have to function within a couple different types of gateways. Those gateways are what allow them to then be part of what we would consider our digital fingerprint that we go and investigate when we're doing forensics. We either have an integrating hub where you might see something like a router or you see a smartphone, and the IoT device passes through those particular devices, leaving its fingerprint behind there. Or we might have a simple hub. A simple hub is a little bit dumber as far as its processing. It literally is just a pass through. It doesn't actually leave any data fingerprints as it passes through a simple hub. A good example of that is some of the doorbell systems that become part of our IoT environment. Sometimes they just have a simple hub that then passes from that doorbell to the simple hub to possibly an integrating hub. But you're going to start looking for these devices at each one of these points. A lot of times our IoT environments also go up into the cloud, which means we have a secondary area that we have to go and look for information. So once we have our different IoT sources, and you can see all my little areas here, we're seeing some form of connection, obviously, for them to talk to our integrating environments. So we're looking either on Wi-Fi, RFID, Bluetooth, near field communication. All of these are actually applicable to IoT, where we don't always see these applicable to some of our other digital evidence that we investigate. So each one of these becomes very relevant. Now, if you think back to our first in the series where we were talking about smartphone forensics, part of our process for smartphone forensics is we actually disable all of these different connections here. That's where we see a workflow change happen with these particular devices, because there is a chance that we're going to have to turn these signal connections back on in order to be able to transfer our IoT data to our integrating hub or a gateway that we might be investigating, which could be that smartphone in and of itself. Or it might be up to the cloud to be able to authenticate into the cloud. So you have some big changes in what your workflow is that are very non-traditional in what we would consider in digital forensics. Once we go through and look at how we're actually going to decide to collect that information, we have to have an expectation of what we're actually going to collect. People always talk about all the different ways that you might be able to pull data from these devices. And there are a lot of IoT devices. Again, I make sure I had a wide camera view because you can see my shelf of lots of IoT things. They think, oh, well, let me just do a chip off of it. Now, we'll go back to what one of my problems was with IoT, or the expansion options with IoT, where we're seeing cheaper processing units, cheaper chips associated with them. Because of that, a lot of times a chip off option is really not viable associated with an IoT device, because the chip itself can't make it through that process to be able to pull data from it. It is something to consider when you're looking at it. So it's not my first choice in my little pie diagram here. I'm going to typically start out with my smartphone acquisition, looking at it as the integrating hub. And it's good because I'm already looking at that as another piece of digital evidence. What I just have to change then is change my analytics and potentially do a secondary acquisition with some synchronization capabilities turned on. Then I would go over to the other side where I'm looking at app analytics and really try to go through and figure out what is this device integrating in as. And then if I don't see that data in the app analytics, then I would move into the cloud capabilities. So I would have to query into the cloud to be able to capture that information. Typically, I'm going to see some type of data resource within one of these areas to be able to continue in my IoT investigation. So let's look at some of those data sensors for home and human. Our easiest one, and this is going to annoy all of you who might have one of these next to you, is looking at Alexa. And I picked this as our primary for our home and human because her smart speaker capabilities have probably done the best evolution associated with IoT devices, because we've really seen it come out as one of the first forms of an AI that was integrating into our homes up to where it is now. And I say it was an AI in the fact that it could think and it did some challenge responses and different things like that, but it was really very early in the stages of it. This has everything in value from our wake word that we're going to see for it, whether or not it answers to Alexa or it answers to computer, because you can change it like that. Those of you who know me know I'm a sci-fi fan. I love that. It has a voice recognition capability, so it can be trained to a specific voice. That's a very good marker for me to have my suspect in my device actually tied together, because I can actually hear the voice with it. It then keeps textual representations of all the communication with whoever it is communicating with, and of course the answer it ends up giving. Alexa has gone through a recent innovation in the way that she functions, and now she has a full AI integration with it. So we gain additional data just by having to change within the device. Now, every device that's out there that had Alexa on it did not have the ability to upgrade to the AI version, but I've had the ability to have a couple of my different devices upgrade to see what the difference is. The Alexa AI is probably one of the more intrusive AIs that you can choose to integrate within your environment, and the fact that she is really learning specifically about you. And on the privacy side, of course, that is a big hard no for me. But on the digital evidence side, that's a fantastic moment, because I know I'm going to be able to tie data directly to my potential suspect. So that part is fantastic. It's going to learn your habits. It's going to learn your processes that you go through. And so I use Alexa in my test environment to do my timer associated with one of my dogs who's diabetic. She has a 10-minute timer every time she eats. After using the AI version, it took her 3 days to realize that the two things were associated to one another. And she changed from, do you want me to set a 10-minute timer? Do you want me to set a 10-minute timer for Luna, which is the name of my dog? So she was able to catch, based on my voice command I was giving her, what the name of my dog is as well, because I would occasionally put that in the command, or I would say it closely thereafter, because once her wake word comes up, she still listens for a few seconds after she has received her command. And it was interesting to kind of go through and test these. This obviously has also been brought up in the fact that you've been working and integrating with a smart speaker for years now. So she has been using that to create her LLM that is allowing her to learn and be smarter. So I'm going to have direct biological information associated with my suspect tied to that smart speaker. I'm going to go and look into my apps. So you see I'm following that workflow associated with it. And Alexa has a lot of them. And the reason I wanted to bring up that there is more than one here is because once you go through and process through one of the apps, the others are very similarly structured. So don't think that just because it's a different Alexa app, you're not going to see similar information with it. You might not have the same voice command capabilities with it, but you're probably going to see some textual information that's going to be valuable to you. So you would go to our app store, you would look whatever app store you're looking at, you'd look at Alexa, and you'd see the safety details. That's what I start with when I'm going to break down an app. Once I see that, I see the information that's collected. And this is actually screenshots directly out of the Google Play Store for this example. And you see she collects a lot of information. This is your expectation of data that you're going to be looking for when it comes to doing an investigation on this particular IoT sensor. This would be true if it was a different IoT sensor. Many of them integrate through an app, so this is the best way for you to kind of start and create a checklist associated with what data you should be expecting from the device. Then I go and try to look at it from the context of the actual mobile device, so I know what I should be seeing when it's on the person side. What did they see when they were setting it up? Because it obviously feels a little different between the two different environments. This is why I always recommend you have test devices that you can go and work with. After I see all that information, I'm going to look at it within the context of my actual investigative tool. So in this case, I'm using E3, which is my tool that I use. I see my account associated with it. I see my user information, and then I start seeing the activities done with Alexa. Those are going to match back to what I saw in the App Store listings. And then I'm also going to see things like the audio files. Remember, because it's a voice-driven function associated with this smart speaker, I should not only see the voice versions of what was said to her, but I also see a textual version. She transcribes everything that she does, including her answer as well. Now, one of the things that shifted with her that was an interesting change when she went AI is that she changed her default settings. This is one of those times when you get those notices in your email that say, hey, we've changed our policies, we've updated something, we've made this change, and then you just say, okay, sure, I'm fine with it, and you don't read it. What she did change is she changed it so her data is now set to never delete. That's impactful because even if you had a preference set early on that was like, hey, I only want to keep my data for 30 days, it now switched over with the update to say now it's never deleting. And if you think about it, you've now had an AI designed voice speaker that is existing. The best way for it to continue to learn is to make sure that its data itself is never deleted. So they're using it to build a smarter model. So things you want to watch for. Now, I said there's multiple Alexas out there, and at the end of the year, it's a great time to kind of get specials on different equipment because they're cleaning one out to be able to bring in the next year's models of different things out there. So we see things like the Alexa for your car, which allows her to then be integrated within that system. So if you don't have a smart car, but you want to have a smarter car, you can actually use her to integrate into the system. This allows us to take a look at vehicle forensics, which is another area of our IoT environment, just through a different methodology, because Alexa then will record information such as your speed, what you were doing at the time, if she was reading a text message to you while you were in an accident, all of that information is then recorded within her environment. Our last little area that we like to look at when it comes to this particular home human area is the compliance data with it. So I'm going to use another device for you. I'm going to use a Ring camera. So Ring devices are crazy popular. Not always the most secure choice as far as a doorbell system goes, but they are very, very popular. So understanding what type of data you would get from this type of sensor is always important for you. So we see I can obviously have a camera set up with it, but the nice thing about Ring, because it did change the way it was storing its data, is it doesn't store the data then locally on the device. It actually keeps it secure and does not keep all of it in the cloud for very long. So that's an advantage to it. It changed that because its individual employees were actually watching all of your Ring data and they thought that was a terrible distraction and they got caught with it with some compliance. So now you can go through and manage your data in your Ring environment by going in and logging in. And if you have a compliant individual you're working with, they can actually request a copy of all their data. I love the compliance data as an additional piece of digital evidence. So it's something that you always want to keep in mind to see if they have that available and make sure you can go and capture it. Once you capture it, you can go through and open that information. That way you see what devices are authorized, what kind of subscriptions were associated with it, how many different Ring devices were associated with an account. And then you get a timeline associated with how many times did the sensor go off? Did that match the time period that you were looking at? So it's an excellent piece of information to add within your timeline analysis. So what if I didn't pick something like Ring and I picked something else? So this is a Whoop. This is a different brand of doorbell associated with our IoT environment. And you see it also has a different type of sensor with it. So it has one of the other hubs that we look at when we look at digital evidence. So just because a tool that I might have doesn't go through and parse this particular model of device doesn't mean I'm not going to have data associated with it. So you see within the smartphone image there, I've actually got the tree view of what the app looks like for this particular device. Once I go through and do my analytics and my testing with it, and oftentimes I use my chickens when I'm doing motion sensor activities, because chickens move around a lot. So I set up the IoT sensors around my chicken coop. And then I can see all of their movement associated with those devices. It's much easier than having a person go out and walk in front of it. So I see that this particular IoT sensor not only kept all the videos locally, so it wasn't integrating up to the cloud, but it kept different versions of it. And I love this about IoT evidence. A lot of times you're going to be able to find both a thumbnail representation of data as well as a full image of that data, which is a benefit. Or if you don't find the full image, you'll still be able to find that thumbnail. So make sure you're looking in both of those cases. I can tie it directly back to my sensor because most of the IoT sensors will then also watermark their images so that they know they came from that particular device, as you can see there with my chicken named Ginger. So let's look at another quick sensor. I'm going to run out of time with all my sensors I had in there. Let's look at the Ray-Ban glasses. So they got a lot of popularity. This is definitely the year that you saw a lot more of the smart glasses go out into market. I think we're going to see more of that happen in 2026 as well, where you see this a little more commonplace. They have different versions now. We have some that have an integrated screen in them. So if I want directions, it will actually display them in the screen of my glasses as I'm walking around. The data associated with them is still very capturable, which is one of the things that we like associated with it. We go in and we look for the app with it, which is called Meta View in this case. I'm going to look at the raw application data associated with it, and we'll see that I have a huge variance associated with all the different images and data that I'm capturing with it. Now, this model here was designed to capture pictures associated with it or video streaming associated with it, so I could live stream just wearing my Meta smart glasses. I actually gave these to my dad and he wore them on his vacation. He felt like he was a super spy or something, taking pictures with his glasses. He had a great time using them, but all of the data was recorded, which was one of the nice things that I was looking at. So one of the things that did not happen though is I didn't capture this data directly off the device, meaning the glasses themselves. That is an important thing with IoT, is that you have to make sure that the data has actually transferred between them. So they've done that synchronization. This is a good example of where you might have to re-image your smart device with the Bluetooth on to make sure that it's synchronized back and forth between the glasses. So any temp stores that are associated with the IoT sensor transfer to where you're getting your primary acquisition. This is what the new version of these look like, where it actually has the mapping view associated with it. It can do real-time navigation with it. It also does live translation with it, which is pretty nice. And it's expanded out into the larger Meta universe to be able to do integrations with Instagram and WhatsApp as well. So different versions of it are going to have different capabilities, and that's also something you have to watch for in your data. Smartwatches, I'm going to go very fast because I'm going to run out of time with it. But this is a very important aspect with a lot of the smartwatches, that they integrate beyond that file system wall. So when you're doing your imaging associated with your smartphone, you're not having to do a full file system image to capture a lot of this data. It's on the other side of that file system wall, which is fantastic for us in forensics. So with an Apple Watch as an example, the only change you have to do is you have to do an enhanced logical backup, which means that you then active the encrypted backup options associated with Apple. Once you do that, you're able to capture all of the Apple Watch features, anything from the heart rate, which obviously gives me a biomarker back to my suspect, which is wonderful, over to their accelerometer information, to their walking data, like were they at this specific area, to how many steps did they take within the day, All of this can then be mapped out to really kind of tie your suspect to a physical location. I've had multiple cases where the Apple Watch is giving me my so-called smoking gun of information that puts my suspect exactly where I needed them to be. And again, accelerometer data. And that takes us to how the different other watches work. I have a variety of different watches that I keep on me. It kind of looks weird when I have like 4 or 5 of them and I'm generating test data with them. But remember that not all smartwatches are going to integrate the same way. Some of them can actually be captured on their own because they run a separate version of an OS. So they might be running Tizen, which is a derivative associated with Android. You can capture that data directly from the device. You don't have to work with an integrating hub because the watch itself is designed to be standalone. When it does work through an integrating hub, a lot of times it's doing a real-time transfer back and forth. So there's not a lot of lag, or you don't have to hit a synchronization button. They're designed for a real-time transfer with their primary device. When that happens, that's when you have to change that step, which I've alluded to earlier. That's when you will do your forensic image of a phone, as an example. Then you're going to do a second image of the phone. But in that process, you're actually going to turn on Bluetooth, which sounds very anti-intuitive and problematic. The reason is you might have synchronized data that is still sitting on the smartwatch that has not transferred over into the primary integrating hub. You need to actually synchronize to have that data transfer through. That's why you would do a second image associated with it, and then you can go through and obviously compare the 2 images together. This is a true protocol change in how you look at smartwatches versus how you look at smartphones, that you have to make an adjustment into what your workflow is and how you're doing it. Other types of devices, such as fitness devices, since again, first of the year, everyone gets into fitness, you have to keep in mind that it also has similar protocols. So you would follow that same smartwatch methodology when you have any type of smart band associated with the device. Even I do the same methodology if I have a ring or anything, like a literal ring or anything like that that is also a smart device. I will make sure that I'm following that same smartphone methodology with the smartwatch, where I'm resynchronizing the device. I see similar information though, because remember, a lot of these times they can have a separate store, which means I have different incoming messages that might exist on my Fitbit versus what was on my device itself, or a message that was on the Fitbit was deleted on the phone. So that's one of the reasons you want to go through that extra step to do a second image. I also have a separate database structure associated with this, so I might be able to recover information off of the independent device I was wearing that I could not recover from the actual phone itself. So breaking down these different apps and how they function, as well as the device, can lead to a lot of really good information. Here's some examples for you where you can see the coordinate information, so I know exactly where it is. But the other thing is looking at that last column there where we have the speed. That's a secondary resource. If I were doing a crash investigation, I can use these other sensors that were associated with my suspect inside a vehicle to be able to figure out how fast were they going at this time. It doesn't care if it was me running or me sitting in a car. I can't run 54 miles per hour, so it must be talking about me riding in a vehicle. Put those pieces together and you can get a much broader view of what might be happening at a point of an accident. Or you can go directly to the device itself. And I actually think I have it on my desk here, but when you look at things such as a vehicle that is a smarter vehicle, so we're going to choose the Tesla, these devices are actually designed to store their information locally, which is nice. They do have the ability to go up to the cloud as well, but a lot of times they keep the data locally, and Tesla actually comes with its own little thumb drive that oftentimes owners will choose to store the information locally within that device. You want to make sure that you're looking for that particular information, because that thumb drive is a Linux file system. So it means it's something that you can immediately process and go through and parse and find the information for it. There's a lot of sensors when it comes to a Tesla, as a good example. So a lot of cameras associated with the device. So it will pick up a lot of information of what was happening around the device itself. And here's just an example for you. This is the use of Sentry mode, which means it is recording information around it as well, and it allows you to go through and capture all of that. And then you can do the same analytics you would as if you were looking at the normal file system. All right, so we have just a few minutes left before questions. I had to go very fast through this because it's a lot of information to put it all into one place. And when I normally talk about this, it's like a 5-day course associated with it. So the future of IoT is looking quite interesting, and it's exciting for me as a science fiction fan because we're really seeing the rise of robots where they're becoming a new source of evidence for us. Earlier in 2025, I went to a hotel in Vegas and I was eating dinner, and then a robot came out of the kitchen and I just about lost my mind because I felt very Star Wars, Star Trek-y moment. A little more Star Wars on this one. This particular robot was designed to just help the waitresses bus tables. And so it would come to a table, it would sit there, wait until its bin is full, and then it would go back to the kitchen to the dishwasher. Very simple commands associated with the robot. But I asked to talk to the owner of the business or the manager associated with the business. And they said that this particular robot replaced 6 people's jobs just by being a table busser back and forth. And they had really loved it and are integrating it in more and more different restaurants. At the same hotel, it also had a robot bartender. It was called the Tipsy Robot, which means you can have the perfect beverage mixed for you. You had to just pick whatever you wanted. It had the recipe, it made it perfectly, and you paid more for it because it was immediately done by a robot, and so it had a lot of show associated with it. And then my last one is later in the year, I stayed at a hotel in California. And instead of having someone bring extra towels, or let's say you forgot a razor or a toothbrush, they actually had a robot that had the ability to bring me towels or a toothbrush or whatever. And yes, I made it bring me like a new towel every day just because I wanted to see the robot and how it actually functioned. And it recorded the information associated with the timestamp of my request, how long it took to actually bring me the item that I requested, and then it would go back to its primary home base, which was in the lobby. So it's an interesting integration of where we're seeing a simpler robot instead of the automaton robots going out into society, seeing these simpler robots now getting integrated in very simple functions. But really, it's that base acceptance of this kind of becoming part of our IoT environment coming to life that we always thought would be science fiction. My last little area here is kind of a shout out to how IoT also has a cheap side to it. And so we'll look at Temu for a minute. This took a lot of countries by storm. A lot of people were able to now have access to a lot of the Chinese warehouses for a very low cost. And they got very excited, and so they bought a lot of things. One of the things that they bought a lot of was IoT devices. And this is my example for you. This is a remote control bird camera. I've actually seen ads for this in the holidays where people are like all wanting to get this for the perfect gift for your mother. I would like you to just pay attention to where you get these particular devices from. I don't think that they are the perfect gift. They are the perfect spy, however, because they have a high resolution camera on them that are powered by solar, and they have a motion sensor. So that part is fantastic. This one also is supposed to have an AI recognition system to be able to recognize different birds. Now, it wasn't the most expensive thing I bought on Temu, but it was one of the higher priced options in my Temu purchases. When I went through and tried to do forensics on it, I found it very shocking as I was looking for the data that there was no data stored locally on the integrating device. I really expected it to be there being a cheaper IoT sensor. What I did notice though is when I was watching the actual process of operation of the device after I had kind of gone through the raw data, is I saw that it had a very short screen come up that said establishing an encrypted channel. That tells me immediately that my device is not storing anything locally. It is indeed communicating to the cloud. And now this is a Temu purchase, so we know where that cloud is located. It's located in China. As it established that encrypted connection, it would then transfer the information up to China, and it actually was encrypted. I was surprised by that. I expected it to be maybe not encrypted in transmission. Sorry, I had a brain cramp there. In transmission, so maybe I could pick it up as a man in the middle and I was not able to see anything there. It was truly encrypted. And of course, that AI feature doesn't make you think, hey, this is going to identify different birds. Instead, what it is identifying the difference of people in the image versus the birds in the image. So definitely think twice before you decide to go into this cheaper side of the IoT sensors. This goes back to our original problems associated with some of the security with these devices. No matter how you look at it, however, we see a ton of data coming through on our IoT sensors and an absolute evolution to where we're looking at our digital fingerprint. I think that we're going to end up seeing more data from those particular examples. And the reason is, I think because they're maintaining a larger scale language model, as opposed to just keeping it all local, we're going to see a lot more data generated from the AI side of it. So I've noticed, as far as like my example I gave you of the Alexa, the old Alexa versus the new Alexa, both of them generate the same data, but obviously my data retention changed now that I have the AI version. Little tweaks like that is going to improve what type of data we can get from them. I don't know if it's going to necessarily be like all of a sudden they're recording more than they were before, but they're definitely retaining it longer because they want to actually incorporate it into a language model. So it depends on the IoT device. A lot of them also have their own GPS chips associated with them. So you're going to have a separate timestamp associated with maybe a geolocation with a satellite. It all depends on what type of sensor it is. You typically are going to get it associated with your only way to capture it, since you can't get it from the device, is you're going to go to one of the integrating hubs. So you work off of the timestamp associated with that integrating hub and then see what the data that is driven from that device is like. So if I were looking at a router, then I know the time zone the router is, or if I'm looking at a smartphone and looking at my capture point, then I can kind of use those as a baseline to generate a timeline and what time zone I'm working with off of that other device. It's a little more analytics associated with the IoT side, a little more manual processing. It depends what you're going to do. Obviously, you typically are going to use a forensic suite. I'm using the one that Paraben produces. Not a big shock. It's my own tool. Why would I use it? It's called V3. The biggest difference you have, so you could use any one of the different many forensic tools out there, is that they're not going through and doing the parsing for you. And I think that's the big change that you have to make once you look at embedded system forensics or IoT forensics, is you have to be familiar with some of the standard formats out there. So you're looking at SQLite, you're looking at JSON, you're looking at plist files, and you're kind of putting that information together yourself to be able to say, oh, this database represents this. There isn't any tool out there that went through and parsed the birdhouse, for an example. I had to manually look at all of it. My forensic tool gave me my acquisition file, but then I had to manually go and break down what the app looked like. And I went as a combination between the app store of what expectation the data should be and then what I actually saw from my forensic device. So it's a lot of manual. It's not impossible, obviously, but it is a lot more manual work for you. But any forensic tool that can give you a good acquisition. I also look at the log files associated with the routers. Not a common practice that a lot of people are doing, but when you have a lot of IoT sensors, then I want to look at how it's communicating with the router, what type of traffic it is, all of that information, and I pull those logs off of the router as well and add that as another layer to my forensic evidence. I'm going to say the device architecture is probably the weakest link because they're not implementing a lot of encryption on board when it comes to any one of these sensors that you see behind me. These are all IoT sensors that my camera might pick up, but they're not encrypted on board, which I think is probably an architectural flaw to them. I would expect that to change in the future. But again, a lot of times they're not thinking encryption when they're rolling out a consumer toy or even a camera system. They're not saying, hey, I should make this super secure for everyone because that's what I'm concerned about right now. They're really thinking about portability, adoptability, and how much does it cost to implement all of this out there? Because IoT sensors are not always crazy expensive. Not specifically, no. You could use Autopsy to do your acquisitions of different devices, and still it has different parsing capabilities in it. It has some viewers in it, but there isn't one in particular, no, that is focused in this particular area. You'd still be able to, you can't do it without any tool, so it's not going to be an option there. Once you actually capture all the data, you're looking for different patterns of use. I used a smartwatch to determine, for example, in a civil case that someone was having an affair on someone else because their watch was seeing their heart rate change every day. We were seeing their accelerometer data. We had another criminal case where the accelerometer data, however, proved that the suspect wasn't at the scene. So it really is contextual to the type of investigation you're doing. You never know. Just always try to think of how does the data an IoT sensor would capture differ from what I might see from something else, and how can I make it relevant to my investigation? The best part of it for a smartwatch is it puts me in a physical location and what I was doing at that particular physical location. So that's one of the advantages you have with an IoT device versus a smartphone might put me close to a physical location, but it isn't telling you exactly what I was doing physically at that. It's not monitoring my heart rate. It's not saying, am I moving in my chair, or what am I doing at that physical location? So that's an advantage. It's a deeper biomarker than what you'll get off the other devices. Probably the biggest one is that they don't actually, once they have the logging turned on, so let's say they didn't make the mistake of not turning it on in the first place, is they're not going through and doing the audits associated with it. If I were looking at IoT from just purely a security side of it, I would make my IoT logs and the data that it generates part of my overall policies. So I would, within my organization, I wouldn't allow you to have a smartwatch within certain environments or in meetings any more than I would let you have a smartphone. It's just they haven't made the hard break between the two types of devices. So a lot of policies didn't get updated. And if they did get updated, they never review that data. And that's probably the biggest security flaw associated with it, is the lack of review of the data once they've decided they're going to log it. Why log it if you're not going to look at it? Probably wearables, and I say that because they don't have an updated security policy that treats a wearable as an information carrying device, as opposed to it's just an accessory that someone has. It's really as big of like an intellectual property risk for an organization as allowing someone to bring in and have active USB port controls within a system. Why allow one and not allow the other? It's like, if you're going to do it, then do a hard break of all of it. If you can do the real time, that's obviously the best, because the type of data you're going to get from that sensor is so different than any of your other data sources. So real time is obviously preferred. I would never go to a once a day. Data is cheap now. I guess I look at it that way. I picked up 12 terabyte drives the other day for $130. The fact that our data storage is cheap and everything else says take in as much activity as possible, because it's not like it's going to be so expensive or prohibitive that it's not realistic to do. And again, the advantage of using AI, even if I get a large data sample in, I can start training an AI to understand that this sensor data is equal to X, Y, or Z. So you have so much more capabilities technology-wise than you used to have. Real time, in the end, real time was the answer. So if it's two sides, public sector and private sector side, remember, you're still having to get consent for everything associated with it. Especially if you're private sector and the devices, who do they belong to? That's a process of policy as well. So in a corporation, if you allow devices like BYOB, you need to have a separate rider within that policy that also incorporates what IoT sensors they might be connecting to, whether it's smart watches, home speakers, whatever it may be. What happens if your corporate data then follows through that chain and starts leaking out in those other areas? So updated policies there. On the public sector side, make sure that your associated warrants that you have include the IoT sensors that are connected to the device. I think a lot of that just hasn't been updated to say any connected sensors or devices associated with this smart device are included within the scope of my warrant or included within this policy. Both of those need a hard update that's happened because it is such commonplace now to have a quick IoT device connect into something. Think of walking around a city. I didn't talk about cities, but like if you connect into a scooter, all of a sudden you chose to have your primary device that might be whatever, owned by this way or being investigated this way, connect into another IoT sensor. So have a policy that incorporates both of that data, or have a warrant that incorporates that data as well, because that now is tracking my location in a different way and very exactly, as opposed to broadly, like I would get off the original sensor of the smartphone. A lot of times it depends on the type of device. I mean, I have boxes and boxes full of smartwatches as an example. Some of those devices, again, have smart OS or watch OS running on them or Tizen running on them. You can do a direct connection to a lot of those devices. So don't give up if you don't see data at one point. Try to direct connect it. A lot of the IoT sensors, depending on it, they will allow you to mount them up as a particular drive within your operating system of what you're using. It will limit what scope you have access to on the device, but it's still access to some of the information to it. You have to experiment and try, because there isn't going to be a documentation or a processing or a policy that allows you to have every single device out there documented to say, do this, do that. There's too many that get released that are just random, that you're like, okay, I've never seen this before. That's going to help happen a lot more with IoT. A lot of you might not have seen the Whoop doorbell system, for an example, but now you know when you come in contact with it that you still can capture the data. It's all about experimentation. It does make it exciting though. I think the biggest thing to watch for is that this particular area, so IoT and embedded systems, is growing faster than the others, meaning that there's more and more devices coming out. Watch for big releases that happen at consumer electronics shows. Those will always share, and you'll see them in social media. That's where you're going to see a big trend. That's how I know smart glasses are going to be up in trend for the next year and are more likely to see them in my digital evidence. So watch for some of those consumer factors, because now they start impacting what data you get to capture.